Hi, it's Sam from the Pekin Public Library, and today I'd like to talk to you about writing. I know you're not in school anymore, so writing maybe has become a thing of the past for you. Maybe that's not something that you have to focus on so much anymore. But when I was a teacher, one thing that my kids always asked me is, when are we going to be able to write stories, our own stories, like fiction stories? And that was usually always one of the last units that we got to at the end of the year. So I'm guessing that a lot of you are maybe missing writing stories, writing fiction stories. And if you have any kind of creative mind or wild imagination, you've probably already thought up 100 stories that you would like to write. So I thought maybe over the next couple of weeks, I could go through some strategies that you can use to write really great fiction stories. So I dragged out one of my writing notebooks that I used to use and decided that I would get into some fiction writing strategies. So there we go. My first page just says fiction and has a list of all of the things that I will talk about while we are writing fiction together. So first we're going to talk about how you collect ideas for stories. We'll move on to talking about how to develop characters and the conflicts that they have, how you work on developing a really great, rich, detailed setting, the different writing styles that you could use in writing fiction, and the different narration styles that there are. So with that being said, let's go ahead and flip to collection, our first collection strategy. I think one of the best ways to write a story is just to think of some normal thing that happens in your life and make it weird. So a few weeks ago, I wrote a story for an escape room, and I did not know what I was going to do. I just decided that I was going to make this virtual escape room that people could play online, and I would just do it. So I sat down and I started writing a story, and I had no idea where it was going to go. So I actually got out one of my old writing notebooks and I saw this strategy, and I thought, that's a pretty good place to start. Just an ordinary moment, just something that is an everyday part of life, and then something goes wrong with it. So the ordinary moment that I decided to focus on was a girl who was stuck in the house with her family for quarantine and really missed seeing her friends and going to school, because that's kind of something that we could all relate to right now. And from then on, I decided that the weird twist was going to be that when she went downstairs to eat dinner with her family, they were all going to be acting very strange and robotic and not answering her. And she was going to figure out that there was a series of puzzles she had to solve to figure out what was going on with her family. So that was the weird twist that I put on an ordinary moment. So I decided that I would write out an ordinary moment to show you what I'm talking about. So my ordinary moment that I have here is walking along a creek with my family. That's actually something that I've been doing a lot with my family. It's been so nice outside, and I've always loved spending time in the woods and just playing in creeks my whole life. That's just been something that I've really liked doing. So it's something that I do with my family and a lot now too. So I thought I could kind of write a story around that very ordinary thing that we do, but just make it kind of weird. So here's what I wrote. Get a little bit closer here. The cold water rushed over my feet as I stepped into the creek to dig a crawfish out from under a rock. Careful, said my brother Doug. Those things can pinch pretty hard. He looked down at his hand as if remembering a past crawfish encounter. Yeah, don't worry about me, I replied, splashing him playfully. I have thick skin. Doug laughed and walked away toward a small waterfall. Hey, this looks like a fun place to build a little dam. I'm going to walk further up and look for some better rocks. Okay, I called. Hurry, though. I might need help with this monster crawfish. I held up the tiny creature and pretended to faint. Har har, he replied sarcastically. I'll be back in a few. He rounded a bend out of sight. and I focused my attention on finding my tiny friend's much larger relatives. In what felt like minutes, the sun started sinking. I looked up, confused, and realized it had been at least an hour since Doug had walked off. "Doug!" I yelled, moving upstream to the last place I'd seen him. "Where are you? Did you get attacked by a fuzzy squirrel and drop dead of shame?" He wasn't there, but I could see that he had been. The small pile of rocks was my first clue, but walking closer, I saw Doug's phone on the ground, the screen cracked. And if that wasn't enough to get my heart pumping, the trail of blood droplets leading into the woods definitely was. So that's where I decided to stop. Kind of wrote part of the story. And then you can see at the bottom of my page, my extended page, because I actually ran out of room and added a little bit so I can just like fold this up into my notebook. But the bottom of my page has maybe like what could happen next, just some ideas for where this story could go. Maybe he was taken by some kind of mythic beast like Bigfoot or something. Maybe he was legitimately kidnapped, or maybe he is playing an epic prank on me for all of the teasing that I do about what a huge wimp he is. So those are some things that maybe could happen. When you're doing collection, the important thing to remember is you don't have to write your whole story. You don't even really have to write any of your story. But that's what I decided to do because I wanted to see where that would take me. So I wrote part of the story as my collection. You could also write a summary of a story that you intend on writing. You could just write a list of ideas that go along with an ordinary moment, stuff that could happen, kind of like I did at the bottom of my page. You could just make kind of a big list of ideas for how an ordinary moment could go wrong. But whatever you decide to do, it's just important to practice it. This doesn't even have to be the story that you end up writing. It's just a good thing to practice. And that's kind of what collection is all about. You're just getting ideas. This idea I like so far, but it could go somewhere completely different. It could turn out to be a completely different story than what I started out with. So don't worry about it. The important thing is just that you start writing. You go somewhere, even if it's just a page. Practice for about 10 or 20 minutes and see where it takes you. Maybe do several ordinary moments and see what you come up with. If you do come up with anything and you would like to share it, please feel free to leave a comment or send me a message and let me know what you're working on. Have fun.